Welcome to Naturopod Live and our discussion around indoor and outdoor learning spaces. Naturopod has a deep commitment to creating supportive, healthy educational environments that are beautiful spaces that inspire students and educators. We're excited to begin the Naturopod Live series today, where we interview education leaders who are sharing their personal stories behind the challenges and opportunities of creating exceptional learning environments to gain real insight and inspiration for what's possible. And for those who are watching live, please feel free to add comments or questions. My name is Bridgitte Alomes, and I'm the CEO and founder of Naturopod. And thank you for being here. We're thrilled to have you join us today. I'm excited to welcome Jay Greenlinger from Oak Park Unified School District, where he's the Director of Curriculum and Instruction for the district. He's also the father to 4 kids, 2 sets of twins, a former teacher, principal, and technology director, and an all-round awesome guy. I first met Jay in person at the Green Schools Conference in St. Paul, Minnesota, where it was clear that we shared a passion for education, sustainability, and basketball. So Jay, welcome, and thanks for being here.
Hi, Bridgitte. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Well, it's my pleasure. And okay, well, let's jump right in, Jay. So thank you for being here. And let's get started with what brought you to this work and why is it important to you? Can you tell me a bit more about your journey?
Yeah, certainly. Here in Oak Park, we really pride ourselves on taking what we consider to be a progressive and constructivist approach to learning, one that keeps children. And a lot of that means being outside, exploring the natural environments. Our school district places great value on environmental education, sustainability, and just understanding our role as caretakers of the earth, so much so that it's baked into our district goals, that our classrooms reflect our desire to instill in students a responsibility and an understanding of just what the earth needs to be taken care of. And that, for the most part, can take place inside the 4 walls of a classroom. But to truly understand and appreciate and have a love for nature, you need to be outside. And we're also very lucky to be nestled right in the foothills of the Santa Monica Mountains National Park. And we're a short boat trip away from the Channel Islands National Marine Reserve as well. So we have at our fingertips some of the most beautiful natural landscapes in the country or the world.
Wow. Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think that, for many, our connection to nature is not really a replacement for social interaction, but it's a good distraction, right? Particularly until we can all really be together again. So can you give me an example of how you stay connected with nature or in a place of creativity when it comes to indoor and outdoor learning?
For me, it's kind of practicing what I preach. I spend a lot of time working outside. At our district office, we've recently built and expanded our outdoor working spaces to kind of mirror what we've been building at our school sites. So just being outside among the pines and among the oaks here in Oak Park allows me to breathe the fresh air and there's a lot of science behind this, but there's also just a lot of intuition behind this, that when we're outdoors and when we're hearing the birds chirp and feeling the breeze on our skin, we have, I don't want to say we're in an enlightened state. That sounds a little too much, but we're in a different state of mind than when we're in, cloistered in a building with recycled air. It's just a different feeling. So for myself, being outdoors as much as possible with and even outside of work with my children, just keeps me connected and focused on what I want my students to feel when they're on our campuses.
Wonderful. Yeah, because we definitely are seeing and hearing more and more about, outdoor learning and of course, indoor and outdoor learning spaces, which, as you and I both know, that's really, truly wonderful. I guess you touched on it before, but can you tell me a little bit more about how you've actually really approached the outdoor learning piece at Oak Park in terms of looking at it on campus? And then maybe share a little bit more about how you've done it virtually.
Good question. So on our campuses, we kind of take a 2-pronged approach to, there's kind of 2, in my mind, there's kind of 2 ways to look at this. There is learning outdoors. So learning that just takes place outdoors. And that's the easiest entry point for anyone. And it's easy because all it takes is a place to sit and maybe some shade or some cover from the rain. And so on our campuses, we have always had a number of outdoor places where small groups of students can go, large groups of students can go to learn together, to be outside, even if it's just doing what we would do inside and doing it outside. There's that just sense of joy that I was kind of speaking to earlier.
Yeah.
Just being outdoors has its own benefits. So there's learning that takes place outdoors, but then there's also outdoor learning, which has a slightly different focus in my mind in terms of using the campus as a classroom and using it to teach students about sustainability efforts, about how we take care of the world, how food is grown, all these other things that would be considered outdoor learning. And so we've taken kind of this two-pronged approach. And especially during the pandemic, we've been able to, with our schools closed, we've been able to do a lot of site improvements because we can have loud noises and we can have cranes and we can have all these things taking place on our school sites. So that when students return to our campuses, there are going to be ample places for students to both learn outdoors and participate in outdoor learning. And then there's a deeper kind of set of principles that we use as we design spaces. We're in the midst of a large school modernization bond, and what we're doing is we're replacing the portable classrooms. So everyone kind of knows the bungalows. We have a number of those across our campuses that we've put in over the course of the years as our enrollment has grown. And what we're doing is we're replacing those bungalow classrooms with a pretty innovative type of building. And the kind of the ethos that we're using as we design these spaces is to blur the lines between the outdoors and the indoors. These buildings have a ton of windows, so full wall windows so that students can see the beautiful landscape outside of our schools. And then the classrooms also have large sliding doors, actually folding doors, so that they can fold out and students have access to outdoor learning spaces, and they're still connected to the classroom. So it allows us to take advantage of the beautiful weather here in Southern California, but it also allows us to spread students out, have students learning outdoors, and again, really not designing our schools as groups of individual classrooms, but one large classroom that has the ability to be wide open or to be closed into individual classrooms.
Right. No, absolutely. I want to talk a bit more about that further on in the show today. But before we go down that path, one thing I do want to really cover off is one part that, one of many things that I admire about you, Jay, is that the struggle is pretty real out there in terms of getting everybody on the same page around the benefits of outdoor learning. Like it's definitely a real challenge out there for sure. So how do you stay positive around that? And how do you inspire others around the benefits of outdoor learning?
Like any leader, any big change in a school, we have to approach this from in a systemic manner, but then also by building individual bonds, right? So I think back to when I first started here in Oak Park as a teacher back in 2000 and something or other, and classroom technology was really becoming a thing that was on the kind of the bleeding edge. And the way that we approached technology was we set some lofty district goals that we wanted all classrooms to have ample and up-to-date technology to enhance the student engagement and student experience. But we started by finding the teachers who were most apt or ready to start integrating this technology and become our success stories. And so, we gradually built that coalition of the willing, gave them all the resources they needed to be successful, and then built on their success and said, basically built a pyramid scheme. Hey, you did great at this. Can you find someone, the next person in your grade level or your department or your school site who you think would be great at this and who you want to work on with this? And then it spreads. And that's the way that we've approached a lot of our work in sustainability and outdoor education, is that we know we have a panoply of teachers who love to be outside, who, if we said you could teach outside every day, they would do it. And they would grab a stump and they would sit on the stump, and they would, and that's the way that they would teach. So we give those teachers the permission and the support and the resources they need to be successful in this. Mm-hmm. And then we've set a goal that we want to connect all of our students with nature, that we want to make environmental literacy one of the hallmarks of our instructional program. And then we do that with some concrete examples. Over my shoulder, this shoulder, you see the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we've integrated those goals into our district goals. Because one thing that any school leader, or leader for that matter, in any industry knows, that what gets measured gets done. And so if we make something a goal, then our district leadership is going to be focused on making that happen, which means our site leadership is going to be focused on making that happen. And then our teachers and other staff are going to be focused on making that happen. And so that's been our approach for all types of change, including our outdoor learning initiatives.
Wonderful. But I'm curious, in those initiatives, what have you seen some of the challenges that have been, and how have you overcome some of those challenges? Can you share some of those in terms of something that's come up and you went, okay, we weren't expecting that. How do we shift and, try something different?
One of the biggest struggles, and I don't know if it's unique to California education, but it's certainly one of the largest factors that counts into California education is resource allocation. If the song, "If I Had $1 Million," I could build the perfect outdoor classroom, but I don't have $1 million all the time to do that. So really identifying resources and allocating resources to that priority is always going to be a challenge for us. We're able to take advantage of the modernization funds from the state and our local construction bond to build some great classrooms that it sounds like we might be talking about later. But on the smaller scale, how can we help this science teacher who wants to teach about local native plants? How can we help her get out into nature without needing to pay for buses, without needing to expend a lot to have this experience?
Right.
So finding the most local opportunities has helped us with that. But if we want students to get to the Channel Islands, we have to charter a boat, and chartering a boat costs a lot of money.
Right.
Get kids across the ocean. And there's no shortage of desire to do that. We just have to be focused on, right now, we focus on one grade level where we bring all students in the 5th grade to Limu, which is the Chumash name for Santa Cruz Island, which is part of the Channel Islands National Park. We bring every 5th grader there every year. This year, we're not able to do that due to COVID and the pandemic.
Right.
But it's been a hallmark of our program. If I had my druthers, I would bring every student every year, and focus, and they'd be able to see the growth over time on the islands of the native plants that they've been planting, to see the eradication of invasive plants that we're removing. So we have our students participating in that work, and we just really focus on how can we make the most out of the resources we have at hand.
Yeah, and I think you do a really good job of that. And I think that for me, I would love for us to explore a bit further about, for the communities that don't have the stunning weather in California, the infrastructure that sometimes that you have access to, those that live in urban areas or have, learning facilities in urban areas, or simply don't have the resources, right? So I'm curious, what advice do you have for them? And what resources could you share with them that may help them to see that it's not all about being in California or having access to resources? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky that our winter is in the low 60s. It doesn't rain here a lot. We have heat issues and wind and smoke issues. We all have our own weather issues. There are days where we have plans to go on a hike, but we can't because there's a fire. And the smoke is keeping us indoors. So, I think in education in general, we're really good at naming the barriers and naming the obstacles. And the hard part when there's something this big and desirable, the hard part is saying, well, what's the first step? And so, when I've spoken to teachers from all across the country and all different types of climates and all urban, suburban, rural communities, everyone has outdoors. I'm really lucky that outside my window, I can see a national park, right?
Yeah.
I can, I'm lucky. But every school has outdoor spaces. And so start where you are. If your outdoor space, if you're in an urban school setting, there's a place on your campus that if you put a bench and an umbrella, you've created an outdoor space. And I've spent a lot of time with educators in urban areas here in Los Angeles, and part of this process for them has been working with students to identify some equity issues. Why aren't there trees on our campus? Why aren't there trees on the streets? What can we do about this? How do we solve this problem? How do we improve our neighborhood and our community? And just going outside and becoming aware of those things is the first step. And again, it's whatever the first step is, do it. When I taught in this district, I love being outside. I prefer to be outside. It's just like my preferred, right? But we didn't have outdoor learning spaces then. This is 20 years ago. We didn't have. The only benches were the cafeteria, and that wasn't like the best place for student learning because it smelled like bologna and it was always being used for lunch. So we would just go out and sit on the grass field. We'd sit under the eaves next to the classroom, and just being outside makes a difference. And then you figure, okay, well, I guess if I had some folding chairs, like some lawn chairs, that might be a little bit more comfortable. And so then you say to students, hey, if you've got an old lawn chair, bring it. And then if resources are scarce, there's always a way to find something inexpensive that just does the job.
Right.
Folding lawn chairs are as good or better than a large picnic bench. Just whatever you have, start there.
I love that. Yeah, whatever you have, start there, and it's about opening the door and getting out.
The first step. You can't go from 0 to 100 without hitting all the other numbers, right? So it's just what can you do first?
Yeah, what can you do first? And I guess that kind of leads me to, obviously not all the Oak Park facilities have the new shipping container design that you have at Medea Creek. That clearly, as you mentioned earlier, promotes beautifully that indoor and outdoor, collaboration, that ease of transition. So I think for us, it's like, tell me more about how are the other campuses managing that? Is it through the top-down initiative, or what other creative things have you seen?
And kind of throwing a little bit of fuel on sparks and flames, people start to generate ideas. An example of that is because of the pandemic, we accelerated our installation of just benches all over campus. So we said to our principals, hey, we want you to find as many places as possible for us to install outdoor seating. So we have large solar panels. So one of our principals set up like a little mini amphitheater under their solar panels. One principal has a design of their school where they're at the corners, there's some bigger eaves. And so we were able to drop a couple tables there in the corner of each building. And then what happens is the computer lab teacher says, hey, right outside my computer lab, there's like this large planted area and it's just a bunch of bushes. And while it's nice, it's covered, and it's an opportunity for us to increase outdoor space. So we replaced the bushes, we put them somewhere else, we transplanted them. We just put down pavers in that area. Okay. We put up some benches, and now all of a sudden the computer lab just extended by a few hundred square feet. And now kids who are designing robots or going through a design process can go outside and do it. Maybe be inspired a little bit more than they would be inside a computer lab. And all of a sudden now there's this expanded outdoor learning space.
I'm sorry, you just said a computer lab is now outdoors?
Well, the computers are indoors, but now it opens to this outdoor space that's now like an extended part of the lab. So we call it the computer lab, but there's a lot, but it's more like a design and engineering lab, where students are building robots. They're programming, drones and things like that. And so instead of doing it on the carpeted floor of the computer lab,
right,
which has the normal hum of 40 computers and the computer lab carpeted spaces, they can now be outside. They're covered from the elements, so the electronics are protected, and they're able to be supervised by their teacher, who could be inside or outside. And all it took was us doing this around campuses, and then another person saying, "Hey, I've got a space we could do that. Can we do it here?" And then what I see my job is, if someone has an idea that's focused on one of our goals, my job is to find a way to say yes. And we've had math teachers who say, "Hey, if you put some benches outside, I could work with a small group of students outdoors. I can have my door open. I can see my students indoors, and I can give more kids outside. I can, just take advantage of the spaces that we do have. And all I needed to do is put a $200 bench outside their classroom. I didn't have to do something dramatic. I didn't have to do a large scale construction project. I put a bench and one of those patio umbrellas, and now all of a sudden we've got extended outdoor space." So some of the projects are gigantic, like 6 classroom buildings with quads, and sometimes it's just installing a bench that can make the difference for that teacher. And now that teacher is going to be having kids outside, every day, and maybe next they'll say, "Well, you know what? Right over there, I could put another bench. I could have 2 groups out here." And then the teacher next to them says, "Well, I could do that too." And then all of a sudden, because people see that we're feeding these ideas and we're nurturing them, they feel like their ideas can get acted upon.
You're really inspiring from within, aren't you, with the infrastructure top down, but allowing opportunities for creativity to involve and to remove some of those barriers for being outdoors.
Yeah, and that's really the way we approach everything in this school district. Is we come to our agreed upon goals, and then everyone who's doing work towards those goals, we're gonna support as much as we can, and give them the ability to share what they're doing and recognized for what they're doing, so that the next person can hop on.
Do you think the secret sauce for Oak Park was in creating those goals?
Yes. Well, not just in creating them, but in nurturing them and resourcing them. So, one of the sayings, I think I already said it, but I say this all the time when I talk about initiatives like this: what gets measured gets done. And that goes back to my days as a principal. If, at my school, we had the desire to increase the amount of garden space. And so we set, one of our school goals was, in 3 years, we want to triple our garden space. So it was measurable. It gave us a lot of time to do it. And it gave us lots of time to find partners, to rally support with parents and teachers and community organizations. And then it ended up where I had a large organic farmer, one of the biggest in the county, helping me plan my plantings for the school gardens, because I didn't know the first thing about how to rotate the right plants and rotate the right crops, and what's going to grow well here, and what can students, elementary students, take care of.
Right.
And so by making it a measurable goal, by giving it time, and by celebrating the successes and putting resources towards those who are doing the work towards that goal, we were able to do it. And I think that's true for any initiative in any school or organization.
Oh, absolutely. It is true, but it's sometimes starting at step one, right? And in creating those goals, creating the infrastructure, creating the ongoing measurement, the excitement around those pieces. It's work, right? It's more extra things to take on. And I guess looking back now from the beginning of when you created this to now, what kind of sense, how does it feel? How does it feel to be a part of something like this, to really have goals aligned, students to be experiencing this transition of indoor and outdoor learning? Can you tell me more about how it feels?
Yeah, I mean, for me, working in Oak Park and being able to lead in Oak Park is like a practice in to some degree in like self-actualization, where some of the things that I find most important as just a person, I'm able to make a difference on professionally. And that's really what teachers in Oak Park feel, is that they can do something, they can have like somewhat of like a higher calling or purpose to teaching. Even, you can be a math teacher at the middle school, but also, be an advocate for outdoor learning or, environmental literacy. And so by having these goals, by living up to them, and by really just living up to them, and not just having the goals, but acting upon them, and leading from the top. Our superintendent hops on the boats with me every time we go to the Channel Islands, and he and I take groups of students on hikes, and we really we live, kind of live the words that we say. We're not just sending out emails to everyone saying, here are our goals. We're, I'm the advisor to a high school Save the Bees club, because that's an important thing in our community. And I've got students who find this very important. And so we do the work too. And that goes a long way with staff, to show that it's not just us coming up with the ideas, it's us putting in the work.
Yeah, you're really modeling what you want to see in the world and in the students. Coming back to the students, and I think that, obviously the work that we all do each day in education is about serving the children, every student that we have in our community. What are some of the successes that you've seen with students with some of the work with outdoor learning? Can you share some examples of some successes that have stayed true to you, or you kind of think about a moment and you go, wow, I remember the time that this happened?
Yeah, there's quite a lot. In our school district, we have the normal academic awards at the end of the school year for students who have a 4.0 GPA, and we really celebrate academic excellence in our students.
Right.
But we also have a way of recognizing students with something we call the green cord, right? And so the green cord is a recognition that students can earn by taking courses at our high school that are environmentally focused, and by taking on some kind of like activism, environmental activism project.
Right.
And for some of our students, it's been the establishment of native bee-friendly gardens. For some students, it's been planting an orchard on the hillside at the high school. For one student, it actually turned not into a necessarily environmental issue, but as she was studying environmental issues and kind of the history of how this particular community has been cared for by people over time, became very passionate about the lack of recognition that we have just as a society, that all of California really is unceded land. And so this student, who's very influential on our campus, she's the student body president. She is proposing that the school district have a land acknowledgement, that at the beginning of every meeting and at the doorway of every school office, we have an acknowledgement that our schools are situated on the unceded land of the Chumash people, that the Chumash people are still here, and that they are still striving for recognition and to keep their way of life alive. And so that, while in and of itself, the plaque is not a big thing, or the brief land acknowledgement at the beginning of a meeting might not be a big thing. What is a big thing is that we have a student who became passionate about something, who did a incredible amount of research and came up with a proposal that seeks to really bring some sort of justice and recognition to an issue that she found very important. And so, our district's motto is educating creative and compassionate global citizens. And I can say with that student, we have done that. That student's going to go off to college, and go off into life, and feel that she can do work with a purpose, and do things that are meaningful and important. And so, my goal and our goal as a school district is to replicate that for all 4,500 of our students.
That's incredible. That is very inspiring. Do you have any other examples that you'd love to say? You said that you had many. So I know our people watching today, it's the students that inspire us to keep going, each and every day. Those little moments of joy or little moments of motivation. It's like, wow, look what I've inspired to create.
Yeah, we have a group of middle school students who we have a class at the middle school called Environmental Explorers. And this is an elective course for students who are interested in global environmental issues. But we start with global environmental issues, and we narrow down to what do those issues look like here at home? Because something like the idea of climate change or invasive species are like gigantic topics that there's no one solution to. And so some students got inspired by the idea of exploring what are the invasive species in our waterways. So in Oak Park, we have a creek called Medea Creek, and Medea Creek feeds into Malibu Creek, and Malibu Creek empties into Malibu Lagoon into the Pacific Ocean. So anything that goes into Medea Creek goes into the Pacific Ocean. And there are important species in this watershed that keep the watershed healthy. But there's an invasive species of crawfish that was introduced. We don't know how or when, but it was introduced into the waterways. And so with these crawfish eat the eggs of a frog species that helps mitigate some insect species that destroy native plants. Right. So it's, there's this balance that nature has built in that these crawfish are disturbing. And so they came up with a design for a crawfish trap that's made out of recyclable materials. And they spent a number of months planting these traps, checking them every other day, measuring the number of crawfish that they captured, and then extrapolating that out as to what needs to happen to completely eradicate the invasive species. They submitted that project and received a $10,000 grant to actually do the project. And so now they're working with scientists and naturalists from the national parks, the state parks, to basically replicate these traps from Medea Creek, which is the start of the watershed, to the Pacific Ocean. And they were featured on a television show with Jacques Cousteau's son. They received this $10,000 grant to do this project. And with that recognition people came out of the woodwork. So a gentleman who lives adjacent to a different creek that flows into Malibu Creek contacted us and said, hey, I've been doing this in my own neighborhood. Let's join forces and figure out how to do this. And now all of a sudden there's these two disparate groups in neighboring communities who are trying to solve the same problem. An adult, I forget what his job is, has nothing to do with science or nature or crawfish, is working with our 12-year-old students, solving this really important issue that has literally global implications, because the Pacific Ocean and the Santa Barbara Channel are an important part of just the biome. And so by solving this problem, they are literally helping to save the earth. And they're doing it just around the corner.
That's incredible. The inspiration around what outdoor learning can start, and how now all the extra learning, all the math that's in there, the science, it's all interconnected, and it's all can actually have these many legs. And to me, that's a great story to share, particularly at the challenges of this time, and I think for me, more of those success stories that we can share with others around people who may be resistant to try outdoor learning or expect it to be, I need to have the perfect place outdoors to get started. It's really not about that. It's about taking that first step. And I think that, each day during this time, and we're thinking about, what is next, or what does this look like, and how do we move forward? Would you say, what have been some of the other bright moments in the last in the last sort of 9 to 12 months for you that kind of go, you know what, this has been the power of outdoor learning? So the success stories you just shared are obviously highly inspirational, but a success story that you think that would actually appeal to everybody of all ages. Has there something else that's occurred during this time that you'd love to share? I'm really curious about that.
You know, I think one of the things that's come kind of to the forefront during the last 12 months as our schools have been closed is the idea of, you know, the word equity is like almost overused at this point.
Yes.
And however, what we're seeing is that our students, our 4,500 students, live in all different types of places. Our students come from up to 50 miles away. Our students, almost half of our students, about 40% of our students, live outside of Oak Park. So we have students who come from communities all around the LA suburbs to attend our schools. And some of our students live in large homes with ample backyards, and some of our students live in apartments with patios with balconies. So our elementary garden program has always been centered on our elementary school gardens, right? We have a phenomenal garden specialist, Deborah Lath, who is an expert in her own right. And we've always focused on planting food and understanding how we grow food and why doing it in a organic and kind of self-replenishing way is important.
Right.
But as we've been providing, video garden lessons, because we can't have kids at our schools in the gardens, right, what we've been focusing on is, okay, well, if I want to grow peas, let's say, do I need a large bed with a trellis, or can I start it in a cup, move it to a bucket, and have it be out on the patio? And all you need is just like a couple of pencils, and then you can tie the pea shoots to the pencils. And so really taking a focus of how can we make this accessible to everyone, mm-hmm, is when we are back on campus, is going to change the way that we plan things. We're going to think about, okay, is this accessible to everyone? Mm-hmm. Or the old mindset was, let's make it accessible to most of everybody. Mm-hmm. And now our focus has to be, how do we make this accessible to everyone? And it's a very different type of planning. So I think that change in our approach is going to be an important piece of our growth beyond the pandemic.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, that comes back to, often I've heard, oh, well, we're in an urban area, we don't have access to land, we can't get to, mm-hmm, a park. But it is as simple as, where can you start? And I love the idea of a cup and a pencil on a patio. Like, how can you start growing peas, not just in a garden, but in relating it back? So during this time, obviously, you've had no students back on campus. You've pretty much been running everything virtually, and obviously creating new spaces in preparation for when they may come back. With the virtual model and really connecting the outdoors, obviously the garden outside that you talked about with the peas is a phenomenal example. And I think that we will definitely share that with more people, because I think that is a great example of where can you start and not where you can't start, in terms of like, we can start here. But what do you think some of the other barriers are? Like, I can see you've got some plants in the background there, like in your living and breathing, having nature. But what are some of the other ways that students can really integrate more of this outdoor learning, considering that most of our education right now is online? And here we are doing Naturopod Live, through this video process. So what other options are there?
I think it's important for schools to think about this and plan for it. One of the ways that we've done is we've given students for PE in elementary schools, we've given them ways that they can, do their physical conditioning. Sure, you can do it in your living room, or, hey, if you're going to go to a park, here's what you can do. Or, at the very beginning of the pandemic throughout Oak Park, you would have seen in chalk something like 15 jumping jacks. And then a few houses down, you would see 10 push-ups. And then a few houses down, you'd see 15 high knees. And it was our PE teachers going around the community and writing out the exercise plan. So as students, were walking their dog or just could be in their neighborhood, they were kind of like in PE class with their teacher. It was just a little asynchronous, but and also just seeing it written by the PE teachers, makes it special. It's better than like an email that says, "Hey, go outside and do 15 jumping jacks."
Right.
Just those little things. And I think it also, again, that'll be like a post-pandemic thing where we don't need to have. You can do a lot more with a lot less.
Yeah.
I think what we're going to learn through this pandemic is that there's a lot of extraneous things, not just in education, but just I think like in our lives.
Right.
And so taking a step back and simplifying things will hopefully be, a lasting result of this pandemic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Really taking moments of gratitude into the small things that we can be a part of, even just being outside and seeing a sign of like, hey, jumping jacks. In fact, that actually would inspire me right now to go outside and move a little bit more.
Well, and like if I can share a personal example is, where I live, just a few miles away from here, and I live, I don't know, like 0.6 of a mile there's a grocery store. In normal life, the speed of life, I have 4 children and, my wife teaches and I'm busy and we're always running. We'd drive to the store. And so what we've started doing is walking to the store. It's like a very European thing, right? Like you go walk to the grocery store to get your groceries and then you walk back. But just trying to do that once or twice a week, one is, I get to, I walk a little bit more, which is definitely healthy. Right. I usually bring 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of the kids with me, depending on how much stuff we have to buy. So I get some time outside, and it's just, and all it really does is add, maybe 10 or 15 minutes to the trip, the walking, and it has a demonstrable impact on my stress level. I get to spend a little bit more time with my kids that I otherwise might not. We would have spent a minute in the car, right, with there be music on, but instead, we're talking as we walk. Right. And so for me personally, it's a very easy thing. It's a simple thing. And it's something that I hope my family continues to do, even when, we get back to normal life.
Right. Whatever that looks like moving forward, right? Yeah. So Jay, I think that for me, you've given us a lot of really great places to start. Where can you start? The simple choices that you could possibly make. But just to bring everyone together at the end, what do you think is really next for you as we're moving into the rest of 2021?
The things that I'm thinking about are getting our kids back on campus, because every single person who works in our school district, and I imagine every other school district, we all got into this work because we want to be around kids. And, I watched my wife teach from our living room. Her school district just returned to in-person instruction. But I watched her for months, trying to connect with students and try to build relationships and maintain relationships with her students through the screen. And I know that every one of our teachers and every teacher out there who has yet to meet their students from this year in person, just wants to be around the kids. And we're not at the point where, we can give them a big hug and sit, hip to hip and talk. Just being in the presence of other people is a really powerful thing. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that and feeling that, and having our teachers see that and feel that, and having our students see that and feel that. Because I think we really are missing that piece of human contact. Is just it's become very hard, and so getting that back is going to be one of the biggest things. And I think once we get back to that in just being around other people, a lot of things are gonna fall into place. And I'm really excited about what we're gonna see about learn from our outdoor spaces and improve them, and then get feedback from the kids and say, what should we do? How should we change this? And what?
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Yeah, getting a human connection, seeing the students and really getting their feedback is something to be really inspired about. Well, Jay, thank you. I am, as always, I'm very inspired to connect with you, and I really feel like I continue to learn something new, new every day as we move forward. And I think collectively we can make a difference towards student success by continuing these conversations around what's possible with indoor and outdoor learning. I want to thank you again, Jay, for sharing what you've learned with us and our audience today. Thank you for our audience for joining us in this new format of Natural Pod Live. Please continue to follow us on whatever platform you're watching on for our next episode. I want to thank everybody again for coming today, and take great care and enjoy the great outdoors.
Bye, Bridgitte. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.